Hey YouTube, how you doing? Biggie here has everything. Welcome to another movie review, and it's been months. And I've been so busy a lot, and if you notice, I'm kind of like growing a little mullet. Yeah, getting that 90s, 80s vibe. Yep, kind of like, yeah. And speaking of the 90s, that's what today's movie is going to be about. Excuse me. Today's movie I'm going to be reviewing is. Oh, excuse me, sorry. We're going to be reviewing a movie I really love. It's very fun. Um, Today's movie, it's if you're a fan of Jim Carrey, I'm going to be reviewing The Mask right here. Released in the summer of 1994, and this has got to be one of the greatest films, especially of Jim Carrey, I've ever seen. And this is the double feature. It's a 2008 DVD. It has the double feature of the 1994 film The Mask and the 2005 sequel with Jamie Kennedy and Alan Cumming called Son of the Mask. I've seen parts of Son of the Mask and I hated it. I could not stand Son of the Mask at all. It was the special effects, the CGI, everything in it was bad. It was, oh my god, it was messed up. I can't. The Son of the Mask, it was horrible. And I love Jamie Kennedy. And I loved him in Scream as Randy Meeks. I really love Jamie Kennedy. Even, yeah. But The Mask, I really love. It was one of the three movies that bolstered Jim Carrey's movie career, and it was one of the three movies he did in 1994. The first film which came of his that came out in 1994 was Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Then in the summer it was, we all know, The Mask, and the third one we all know, which I really love, was with him and Jeff Daniels, called Dumb and Dumber. I love that. Yeah. And yeah, he was really big in the 90s. He started slowly in the 80s, like in 198 like in 1986, like with called Peggy Sue Got Married, with Kathleen Turner, Nicolas Cage, and Helen Hunt. And like 1988, he made a guest appearance in Dirty Harry 5, the Deadpool, with Clint Eastwood as a heavy metal musician that eventually died from got drugged, and by an obsessed fan of a character played by Liam Neeson, and who was trying to impersonate Liam Neeson's character, Peter Swan, in Dirty Harry 5, the Deadpool. And but what else can I say about The Mask? Yeah. And I love, yeah, and Jim Carrey, he really had gone up in the 90s. His movie career was bolstering in the 90s and the 2000s, along with other movies, like not just the three I said, but Me, Myself, and Irene, which I really love. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, I liked. The Cable Guy with him and Matthew Broderick, Liar Liar, The Truman Show, Man on the Moon, Batman Forever, Bruce Almighty, Fun with Dick and Jane, Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, and the 2009 Disney film A Christmas Carol, where he's like Scrooge and other characters. And but in the 2010s, he started to decline a little, but then, like with Dumb and Dumber 2, I say it like that, Dumb and Dumber 2, instead of the Roman numerals 2, it just says, or the Roman numerals 2 or the number 2, it just says T-O. And I couldn't get into that, Dumb and Dumber 2. And also, but in like the 2020s, I guess, like when before all this COVID and the face mask, he was starting to come back to like redeem himself, like with Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And there's another Sonic the Hedgehog, a third Sonic the Hedgehog movie that's coming out this at the end of the year, and I would really love to see it. I'd love to see the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. If you're a Sega guy and you like Sega guy if you like video games and stuff. Yeah, and this also has like Peter Riegert as the Lieutenant Calloway, Peter Greene. Peter Greene never really starred in much movies or anything, but he did star in a movie same year as this called Pulp Fiction with Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta as a rapist cop named Zed or something. I really love Pulp Fiction. I love Samuel Jackson. That they speak English in what? English, mofo. Do you speak it? Yeah, and this also has Amy Yasbeck as a reporter. Peggy Brandt. She was starving for like to get good juicy stories and stuff. And Richard Jeni. He played Charlie Schumacher, I believe. Charlie's best friend. I mean Stanley Ipkiss, Jim Carrey was Stanley Ipkiss as he's an insecure bank accountant, bank clerk, and Richard Jeni played Stanley's best friend, Charlie, and may Richard Jeni rest in peace. I was very devastated to hear about what happened to him, and when he died in 2007. I really don't want to mention or talk about it, especially right. It's so sad, but I really enjoyed him, especially in The Mask. Yeah, and this was a classic. Yeah, and the movie is based on the Dark Horse comics, which also has done other titles like Sin City, Hellboy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, 300, Ninja Gaiden, and Star Wars. And I really loved like Hellboy and stuff. That was some good stuff and everything. And I definitely love The Mask. And I loved the special effects. I love the CGI in this. And I'll tell you right now, the CGI and special effects in The Mask is a whole lot better, way a lot better than The Son of the Mask, especially for being a 1994 film. The Mask had a lot of great special effects, and the film is directed by Chuck Russell. He's a director, screenwriter, and he's directed like A Nightmare works. He's had works like the 1988 remake of The Blob and Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the slasher film A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors was Chuck Russell's directorial debut, and also he's directed, like I said, Arnold Schwarzenegger's action film Eraser, which I liked, and Dwayne Johnson movie The Scorpion King, which it was okay, but it wasn't not bad, but it could be better. But I think Chuck Russell did a fantastic job with this, and also the movie, it starts in Edge City. It shows scuba divers. They're trying to get like open a chest or something, but then a pipe comes on and crashes on them, and then it hits them, but then the chest that the scuba divers opens, and then the mask comes out. It was a Loki mask, which is like like this one, Screw Son of the Mask, but I'm talking like something like that. Yeah, and he, and then it shows like a place called Edge City, which um in yeah. Edge City, yeah. Bank clerk, insecure bank clerk Stanley Ipkiss. He, he is ridiculed by everyone except his coworker and best friend Charlie. We know, and it shows him giving tickets to a lady played by Jolie Fisher, and she goes, said, take you and your boyfriend out, and said, thank you. She's like, thank you, Stanley. You are the nicest guy. He's like, I know. And yeah, and then one time, Tyrell, a gangster played Dorian Tyrell, who was played by Peter Greene. Whose boss is a guy named Nico. He had like a little bald, but he had like a ponytail in the back, and yeah, Tyrell sends his girlfriend Tina Carlisle into a bank to record its layout for an upcoming robbery, and she's like, she's like, and Cameron Diaz, who this was her movie debut in this, and she was, or like Jim Carrey would say, smoking. She was, oh, that was my first crush on Cameron Diaz too. With like that, with the mask, and there's something about Mary. But anyway, yeah, Dorian sends his girlfriend into the bank to record its what I saw, Cameron Diaz's Tina Carlisle, Tina's purse had like a camera in it, so they can find it. And that meanwhile, Stanley is attracted to Tina, and he keeps messing up and everything, and then he sees her at the Cocabonga Club, and Charlie gave Stanley tickets and to it, and then Stanley had to go pick up his car by two scamming mechanics. He said all he needed was an oil change, but they said he needed a transmission and some other work. And one of the mechanics was his name was Bert. He was played by Johnny Williams, who I saw in the movie Goodfellas with Robert De Niro. He was the one who bought the pink Cadillac, and De Niro told him not to buy anything because after the heist, and he's like, "We got a million bulls out there. Everybody's watching us. You get a car," and he's like, "It's under my mother's name. It's a wedding gift. I don't care whose name it's under. You stupid, don't buy anything." But after they scammed him, they gave him a loaner car, which was a piece of crap car, and he drives it to the Cocabonga, and then after Charlie takes off without him, Stanley crosses the rope and everything, and then they throw him out and everything, and while he was there to watch Tina perform, and then he's driving home in his loaner junk car, and then the car breaks down while he's driving home. It broke down on a bridge, and then all the parts fall off, and then he looks down at the harbor bridge, and he was trying to rescue a humanoid, he thought it was a person or some he found he found it to be a pile of garbage, and he found a wooden Loki mask, which I showed on the DVD, and then he returned to his apartment, and he goes home and sees then the landlord sees him after all wet and everything, and she complains about him getting water on her rug, and she's like, "This is coming out of your security deposit at Kiss." He's like, You know what, Mrs. Peeman? What? Nothing. Well, that's what you are, Ipkiss, a big nothing. And then he's like, when she walks out away and shuts the door, slams the door, he says, are you due back at the lab to get your bolts tightened? I should have said that. And he goes into his apartment. He sees his dog Milo, and then he sits down, watches a program with like Ben Stein talking about masks and stuff. Dr. Newman was played by Ben Stein, and he watches cartoons like the Wolf Man, Tex Avery cartoons, and then he tries the mask on, and he sees it had magical powers, and then he puts, and then he's like he puts the mask on, and then he's like and spinning, and then he shows him his mask. He's like, smoking. It's party time. Party. Why? Because I gotta. And then he leaves and then walks out the apartment. He's like, shh, tippy toes, and then the clock came out of his pocket, and then he smashes it with it, and he's like, snooze. And then Mrs. Peeman comes out and she sees him, and I love the special effects with his eyes. He's like, ah! And then she tries shooting him, but then he falls out, and he's like flattened like a pancake, and he's like, look, Ma, I'm roadkill. and then some guys telling him to move off the road, and he's like, and the guy's beeping his horn. He's like, move out of the road, and then he takes a horn, and then it said, squeeze me gently, and then he squeezes it, and it makes that sound, and then all the windows on the car shattered, and then the guy's hair looked like a afro, and he just drives off, and then he indulges himself around a comical rampage through the city like some punks and stuff, and he scares them. Like he grabbed the guy's nose and pulled his underwear pants, and then he puts on a little balloon show with he's like, here you go, son, a giraffe. And he's like, now get out of here, you bother me. And he gives one. He goes, here you go, a French poodle. And he's like, sorry, son, the dog was rabid, had to put it down. And then he makes one, and he's like, my favorite, a Tommy gun, shoots it, and starts scaring the punks away. And he's like, with these powers, I could be a superhero. I could fight crime, protect the innocent, and then he he goes to the mechanic shop who gave him the faulty car, and then he comes in with two tailpipes, and he's like, hold on to your lug nuts, it's time for an overhaul. And he's spinning, and then you can see all the mechanics and everything, and I really love that part. And then the next morning, Stanley encountered Detective Mitch Calloway, who asked him about what happened. He said, and about what happened last night, and Lieutenant Calloway gives him a card, and he's like, you betcha, thank you, and good luck cracking the case. And then and then he encountered news reporter Peggy Brandt. They were both investigating the mask's activity, and to obtain the funds necessary to attend Tina's performance, and yeah, whatever that, yeah, and but then the next night he goes back to the Cocabonga with the mask on, and he puts them in his apartment, and then he gets ready to go see Tina perform at the Cocabonga, and then he goes to the bank and raids the bank where Dorian Tyrell and his men were trying to rob, and then it foiled Tyrell's Dorian's plan, and then he goes to the Cocabonga, just goes in there, and he sees Tina wearing the mask. He's wearing the mask, and he sees Tina performing, and his jaws drop, and he's like, "Ugh!" And he's like, and you see where he's open his chest, and he's like, and his face transforms into that wolf. He's like, "Oh!" And then he's hitting himself on the head, like trying to calm down. And then he goes up on the stage, and then and dances and performs with Tina, and he's like, "Let's rock this joint." And then they're like, and I really love that I really like that. That was a hell of a performance, especially classic for me. And that scene I really liked. Yeah, and after the robbery, that he foiled Dorian Tyrell's robbery. One of Tyrell's men was shot, and the black guy, African American bald guy, Freeze, died, and then Tyrell confronts him when he saw Stanley dancing exuberantly with Tina, and they end up kissing, and then he confronts Stanley, and he tells everybody his men tell everybody in the crowd to leave, and Dorian tells Tina to leave, and then he says, "I want to know where my money is, and I want to know right now." And they shot one of Stanley's clothing, leaving behind a strap of clothes from his suit, which reversed into a piece of his pajamas, and they shot. And I love the special effects of Stanley when he's Jim Carrey, when he transforms when they're shooting at him, and he's like avoiding, like, the bullfighter, and the Japanese, like, ay, and Elvis, he's like, "Thank you very much." Ooh, and then the cowboy, but then they shot him. He's like, "Oh, you got me, partner." But then and then they give him this Oscar, and he's like, "Thank you. You love me. You really." But then he runs away, and then Calloway and his partner, played by Jim Doughan, who I remember from Stuart Little. He's Detective Doyle. They arrest Tyrell, and then he finds a piece of cloth from Stanley's pajamas, and he thought it was his involvement, but and then eventually Dorian and his men are released, and there was a part where Dorian told his men to find every lowlife, whatever, ever to help him get that green-faced person before the cops do, and he was offering a $50,000 bounty, $50,000 to that whoever finds them, and then later Stanley goes to Dr. Newman, Ben Stein, and who recently published a book on masks, and he discovered the creation of the Loki mask and the Norse of the god of mischief and its powers. And he goes to him at the daytime, and it turned out the powers of the mask were only active at night. And though Newman believes it is mythology, he concludes the mask's personality is based on Stanley's repressed desires. And then that night, Stanley meets Tina at the park. He meets him as himself, and then meets her as himself, regular, normal Stanley self, and then he changes into the mask, and then but then and I love the scene where she kicked him in the nuts, the you know what, and he's like, she is so coy, and then Calloway and his cops, Calloway and Doyle come. They're like, freeze, Ipkiss, and he's like, put your hands up. But you told me to freeze. He froze like, all right, unfreeze. And then they look, they search him, and they find like all play toys, gags, prank jokes, and they're like, a bazooka. I have a permit for that. And then a picture of Calloway's wife, and he's like, Margaret, you son of a pizza pie. I don't want to say the bad word on YouTube. And then Stanley just, they cuffs Stanley, but then he just switched the cuffs to Doyle and Calloway, and then he smacks him and then just runs away, and then locks the gate and everything, and then Stanley turns around, sees there's like hundreds of thousands of cops right there, including the SWAT team. And then I love that special effects, and which shows his skull in the eye. He's like, oh, and they're like, it's over at Kiss, and then and then he like just hypnotizes the cop and like plays that song Cuban Pete, and all the cops are dancing, even some like street women like prostitutes are dancing with him, and I love that scene, and they're like, and I love the and when Doyle and Pete and Calloway climb up the wall, and they see and then Doyle's like dancing, and then Calloway's like, start dancing, I'll blow your brains out in there, and then eventually the performance stops, and then he fled, and that Stanley fled, and then took the mask off, and then Peggy came with distracts Peggy. He fled with Peggy after he distracts the police with a mass performance of that song, which I really like. And then he gets in Peggy's car, and then they drive off, and then turns out, yeah, she got him into a trap, just so she betrays to Tyrell just so she could get the $50,000, because she was like, you are a nice guy, I just couldn't lose my condo, you know how hard. And then she gave then they Dorian took the mask from Stanley, and then he puts it on, and boy, he was mean looking and ugly looking, like bulky and stuff, and then they force Stanley to reveal the location of the stolen money, and they go into Stanley's apartment while Stanley's in their Lincoln Continental. Stan, all tied up with tape on his mouth, and Milo sees Stanley in the car. Milo, the dog, sees he sneaks out of the apartment. He, I guess, follows the Lincoln, and and then after the bad guy, Tyrell's men grab all the money, and then they had the door on the Lincoln open with Ipkiss tied up, and then they turn him into the police and everything, and Stanley's arrested for everything, and Tina visits Stanley in jail, and he urges Tina to leave the city, and she thanks Stanley for showing her kindness, and tells him the mask was unnecessary, and they attempted a kiss, but then the cop interrupted, but then they had to leave, and they had to stop. The visiting hours were done, and she left. She attempted to flee, but Dorian's men were on her, stalking her, and they kidnap her, and they prepare. They find some for them to dress up for the charity ball at the Cocobonga. They're hosted by Nico and attended by cities like including Mayor Tilton, and upon its arrival, Dorian comes there with Tina, and then he puts the mask back on and transforms that mean thing, and he was prepared to destroy the club and everything, and Nico sees it, and he sees Dorian in the mask, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm just an ex-employee who's come for his back pay, or should I say payback." And he's like, "Dorian?" He's like, "Kill him!" And then they shoot him. Everybody's running for their lives, and then the scene where Dorian's like, "Come on!" Nico shoots him, aims, but then and then Dorian just like heals up, and then he's like all the bullets in his mouth, and he's like, "I love the special effects." And then shoots Nico's like and kills Nico, and he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, I will be your host for the remainder of the evening." And then that's when Stanley escaped the police station, and Milo managed to jump in the cell in the window, and Stanley got out. Milo helped Stanley grab the keys while the cop was sleeping, and then Stanley broke out of the cell, and then he grabbed the cop's gun. He tried, but then the cop got the gun, but then the cop woke up, and Stanley knocked the cop out, and then Calloway comes, and Stanley went out to stop Tyrell, and he was taking Calloway hostage, and then he's like, "I am seriously stressed out right now." And then they go to the Cocobonga in Calloway's car, and then one of those old Ford Crown Vic ex-cop cars, unmarked. They go to the Cocobongo, and he locked Calloway in the car and tell Milo to stay in the car while Daddy go kick some butt. And Calloway's like, "He's a dead man." And then I love when Milo sneaks out of the back seat of the door of the car, and he's like, and Calloway's like, "Smart dog." And Stanley enters the club, and he told Charlie to help get all the people out, and all the good people out and everything, and sneak them out in the back, get them someplace safe. And Stanley tried to stop, but he was discovered and captured. He was like, and then he was hiding somewhere. He's like, "This is what to show what it meant." And then one of Tyrell's men sneaks by, puts a gun to his. He's like, "Crap, drop it, Ipkiss." And they show, and then they show Dorian that Stanley decided to crash the party, and then because they tied Tina up to a tree, and one of those and then like taped her, and they put a bomb there, and he's like, "This party's over in 10 minutes." They set the thing for 10 minutes, and then um, and then and Tina tricks Tyrell into removing the mask by saying all she wanted was a kiss and everything, and then and he said, "There's always time for one last kiss." Then Dorian takes the mask off, and then he kisses he kisses. They start kissing and then she removes her foot from being her leg tied up. She kicked the mask out of Dorian's hand, and then the guys were trying to get it, but then Milo came in, took the mask, and then I love Jim Carrey's like, "Run, Milo!" And then when one of Dorian's henchmen tried grabbing Milo with the mask, and then mask fell out of Milo's hand, and then he tipped him, and then Milo puts it on, and I really love the special effects. Milo wearing the mask, I really love that, and then I love it when he scares one of Dorian's henchmen, which was played by Denis Forest, the long hair one, and when he tried to grab his henchman tried to grab the gun, and then Milo just in the mask roared and scared him away, and there was one scene where he's peeing on him, and Milo pees on the bad guy, and he's laughing, and then he bites Milo bites one of the bad henchmen in the butt, and then he goes over to Stanley, and Stanley takes the mask off of Milo, yeah, Milo was doing all that while Stanley and Dorian were fighting each other, and they were doing that, and he eventually knocked Dorian out. Dorian was holding Stanley's hair, and then Stanley just punched him, knocked him right in the jackpot thing. He's like, "Arr!" And you can hear the jackpot machine sound, and Stanley Stanley took the mask off of Milo. He retrieves the mask, and the mask fell behind the bar. Stanley goes behind the bar, and then he puts the mask on, and then he surprises them like, "Did you miss me?" And then he takes the drink, and he's like, all you see like the holes like leaking out of his, and he's like, "I guess not." And then he's like in his Clint Eastwood form, which some like he did in Clint Eastwood thing he did like in Bruce Almighty back in 2003. This one he said what dirty hair Clint Eastwood said as dirty hair. He's like, "Now you gotta ask yourself one little thing. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punks?" And then it shows the weapons, and then the weapons, and then the flags that say "bang," and then scares the henchman away, and then he gets rid of the weapon guns, and then and then Stanley runs over to Tina to save her. The bomb was about ready. The dynamite was about ready to explode, so he just grabbed it, put Stanley in the mat, put it in his mouth, eats it, and then he's like, and then explodes in his stomach. It's like, and he's like, "That's us, spicy meatball. That's a spicy meatball." And then Dorian gets up, and then he flushed down. Then Dorian tried getting up. He had a knife, and then Dorian came charging at Stanley in the mask, but Stanley painted something like a little on the tree, like a flush thing. It flushed Dorian down like the toilet, like flushed him down the drain of the club's ornamental fountain, and then drained it empty, and then took the knife down with him, and he's like, "You were good, kid, very good. But as long as I'm around, you'll always be second best, sorry." And then Stanley takes the hat and mask off, and then Stanley and um and Tina tried to kiss, but then the cops came, and then with Charlie arrest the cops arrest Tyrell's henchmen and then when Tina and Charlie came, Charlie and Tina and Stanley were about ready to leave. Kellaway tried arresting him again, and then Mayor Tilton came in, big guy, and he's like, "Mayor," he's like, "Watch it, Chunk." He's like, "Mayor," he's like, "What the hell's wrong with you, Kellaway? That man is the Mask." "No, Dorian Tyrell was the Mask. I saw it with my own eyes. This young man, he had just saved our lives." And then, and they made Stanley a hero and everything, and then I love the scene where Milo's running with the mask, and Kellaway's like, "Mayor Tilton, did you see?" And he's like, "Leave the dog alone. I want to see you in my office first thing tomorrow morning." "Yes, Your Honor." And then the following day, Stanley was now more secure and better, and they returned to the harbor bridge with Tina. Tina throws the mask in the water before she and Stanley kiss, but then Charlie tried to retrieve the mask for himself only, but Milo swam away with it, and Milo swam away with it, and I love that part. And like I said, I love the scene where Milo had the mask on, and it was just a great movie. I mean, what else can I say about The Mask? I won't go near Son of the Mask, and I've heard from a bunch of YouTubers and a bunch of other people, even non-YouTubers, say they want nothing to do with Son of the Mask. I like The Mask, but not Son of the Mask, and especially Chuck Russell. He did a great job with them. And The Mask has about a 68-70% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 6.9 out of a 10 on IMDb, and a 3.3 out of a 5 on Letterboxd, and which was pretty good. And I guess Siskel and Ebert gave this movie 2 thumbs up, and it was a box office success. It grossed $119 million domestically, over $350 million worldwide. It became the second highest grossing superhero movie at that time, behind the 1989 film Batman with Michael Keaton, and it became the most profitable comic book movie of all time, and remained until 2019, when the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, Lee Phoenix, came, and it was one of the first 3 films, one of the 3 films with Jim Carrey to be released in 1994. It helped him, the actor, to stardom. The film was very successful of these 3 films, both critically and commercially, but it's actually, and it says right here, I just found out it has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Because I found one, it said 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 80, and right here I found one that said 80%. Let's see for myself. That's weird. Yeah, it has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. 68% of the audience score, it says. But yeah, this movie was pretty good, especially for its time. I'd give this movie a lot of praise, and I really recommend it. To anybody who's never seen The Mask before, I recommend you go see it. You won't be sorry. And definitely loved Cameron Diaz's performance, especially this was her movie debut, and especially she was smoking. And yeah, Jim Carrey was great. This was a great movie, and especially for its time. But I would never go near Son of the Mask. If I ever watched this movie whole thing and reviewed it, it'd be worse than Mega Rant. It'd be dangerous, more dangerous than a Mega Rant. Yeah, but yeah, it's done very good theatrically and critically. Yeah, and it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, but it lost to Forrest Gump. And he was nominated for a gold. Jim Carrey was nominated for a Golden Globe, and also I forgot to mention, it established, yeah, and it also influenced the resurgence of 1940s like swing music in the 1990s. Yeah, and which began the swing music revival, which was it was like the era of the 30s and 40s, and I'm reading right here, the swing music, swing revival, retro swing, also called retro swing and neo swing. It was a renewed interest in swing music and Lindy Hop dance beginning around 1989, and it reached its peak from the early to mid to late 90s. And I thought Cameron Diaz did pretty good with that. Her performance in that, yeah, that was pretty good. Especially this is one of my favorite Jim Carrey films of all time. And you can't go wrong, with the special effects, especially for 1994. You can't beat it. All right, YouTube, nice seeing you. Take it easy, be safe, and stay out of trouble. Peace.